Hello and welcome back to Off the Record, part of the Tudors Dynasty and Beyond podcast. I'm Rebecca Larson.
And I'm Amy McElroy.
And Amy, I'm so excited because I've mentioned this on episodes this week that February marks 9 years of the podcast.
It's
I can't,
amazing.
I can't even, I think back to the very first episode that I recorded, and it was one where I like wrote a script and just recorded myself reading the script essentially. And it was on, I think I called it The Birth of the Tudor Rose, which I see it was so terrible that I took it down everywhere except for Patreon. But it just blows my mind at how different it feels now versus back then when I first started. I was terrified. I was nervous. You could hear the nervousness in my voice when I recorded it. And I just assumed nobody was ever going to listen to this podcast. And here we are 9 years later. There's
Yep.
10,000 people or more right now listen to the podcast. And I was happy back then to get 20 listens. So
9 years is amazing.
it I never thought I would be doing it this long, let alone doing it full time as my job. So I just want to thank everyone who listens to the podcast, watches the podcast, for sticking with me for so long. I want to thank everybody who has been a co-host on the show. I mean, we go as far back as Steph and Heather and Christine and you and Emma, and I couldn't do it without you guys either. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So today, let's start out with last week because last week we talked about what if Richard, third Duke of York, had become king, and
Yeah.
we talked about how it was kind of outside my comfort zone.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure how the episode was going to do, but it did pretty well, didn't it?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. Obviously, both of us primarily at the moment focus on the Tudors. And so it was a little bit outside of our depths, but I actually really enjoyed it. So it's quite a fun one. So
Did the listeners enjoy it? What were the comments saying?
I've actually got some comments. So
Yeah, let's hear them.
um some of the ones that I'm going to read out loud because their full comment deserves it. But others I have shortened. So the first one that I want to tell you is this should make you laugh. Charlotte remembers the dandelion rhyme.
I'll see. I
There
am
you go.
okay. Can I just say, after that episode, I had to Google it and find out where it originated because I thought this is such a twisted rhyme. And if you didn't listen to the episode, it was the old, I'm going to say it like everybody knows this. It was the old thing when I was a kid, in the 80s. And yeah, basically in the 80s, we would pick a dandelion from the grass and we would put our thumb under the head of it and we would say, Mama had a baby and its head popped off. And when you said popped off, you'd flick off the top, the flower of the dandelion. And when I said it, Amy looked at me like she was mortified. So when I looked it up, there was no real origin story other than they thought it began in the early 1900s sometime. And no real reasoning behind it. There's got to
Well, at
be.
least you've got one other person that
Mhm.
knows it.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
thank you,
also
Charlotte.
my siblings also know it too, so at least I got a few people behind me. All
But
right,
yes,
sorry.
thank you to Charlotte for proving that Rebecca is not quite insane yet.
Thank you,
So,
Charlotte. I appreciate that.
Jill said that she loves Sunday mornings with two of her best friends, which is
Ah,
very, very sweet. So thank
yay.
you, Jill. Teresa says the videos are so interesting and loves our work. So that's very, very
Oh.
nice. So this one is specific to last week's episode. So it's from Laura, and she says, thank you both, ladies, for a fascinating glimpse into an alternate history. Lots to think about there, great scenarios and possible outcomes. And there's an idea as well. I
Oh.
would love it if you all would contemplate what if Elizabeth Woodville had honoured the codicil in Edward IV's will, thereby not staging a coup to oust Richard, Duke of Gloucester, as protector, which led to what we know as the Princes in the Tower. Then she says, really enjoyed the discussion, and Rebecca, she's not a fan of Elizabeth the First either. So
I'm not
there you go.
alone. I love it.
Um, May, I think it's May, it might be Maya, says, great topic. Would like to think that Richard of York would be a good king based on his protectorate days in terms of economy, but looks like he was not very good at reading the room. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I think that was our friend of the show, Maya, I believe.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Cindy says, loved this. You make my Sunday mornings.
Oh,
And there's another suggestion for you. You could wear your tiara as a brow band and then your headphones would still fit. So I
I
think next week I am expecting a tiara.
I would wear it as a brow band, but it's like children's size, and it already hurts my head when I wear it. So I can't even imagine wearing it. It would just squeeze my head. Great idea. It's a great suggestion. However, I need a new tiara in order to
Yeah, I
do
was going
that
to say,
as
I
well.
think the consensus is need a new tiara then.
Yeah, I need to. Hey, you know what? I'm always open to you guys finding me these things and sending them to me if you want.
Yeah, let's open find Rebecca a new tiara
Yeah.
wing.
Yeah, I'll wear it. I'll give you credit for
Yeah.
gifting it to me. But don't feel like you have to.
Joni says absolutely loved this, and then says, I understand where Margaret of Anjou was coming from, but I've always felt that Richard was punished for both his competence and royal blood. That's an
Hmm.
interesting theory. I
Yeah.
like that actually. Pushing him to ultimately make a play for the throne to protect himself and his family. He likely would have brought more stability for sure.
Yeah. These are some great comments.
And then Laurie says, such a fun episode. Loved that you dove into all the potential and very feasible scenarios. I agree, Richard of York certainly could have been a good monarch if the circumstances had been different. So thank you to everybody who commented. Please continue because I really love the comments. So.
I do too. All right, let's get to the topic of the day. This one, I believe it was suggested by somebody, and I was going back through comments trying to find who it was, and I apologize. I didn't write down your name, but this was your idea if you're listening. It is, what if Elizabeth I had died from smallpox in 1562? And
Yeah.
this one is actually, it's an interesting one. I think when I first saw it, I thought, really, how much can we talk about? How much is there to cover? And then I think the more that I looked into it, I went, okay, this is a good topic. And you agreed.
I think there's, quite a big difference between what would have happened in 1562 and what happened when she actually died, because
Yeah,
obviously that's a big time frame difference. So I
huge.
think it gives us opportunity to talk about people that we might not talk about when she
Yeah,
actually died. So
yeah.
I like that bit.
I'm looking forward to this. So let's kind of get into it because at 1562, I think Elizabeth was like 29 years old. She'd only been
Mhm.
on the throne for like 4 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She had no children at this
Mhm.
time that we're aware of. Let's just say that.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole today.
Okay. All right. Well, we won't go there. And at the time already, her council and probably Parliament too were begging her to name a successor already. And if we go back, I feel like we need to set the stage a little bit with the death of Henry VIII, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because his act of succession, which I think his last one was in 1543, I believe.
Yeah.
I never remember if it's 43 or 46, but I think it was 43. And in that, of course, he named his son Edward and
Yeah.
his and Edward's heirs. And then after that, it would be his daughter Mary, who
Yeah.
also was illegitimate at the time
Mhm.
too, and her heirs. And then Elizabeth, also illegitimate, and her heirs.
Yeah.
And then it was passed by Parliament. So this was law. This was set in stone. This is the order that it should happen.
Yeah.
And Edward the Sixth came along and decided he wanted to switch it up.
Hmm.
And I was curious about this because I thought, well, each monarch should have the opportunity to change the succession if they want to, but they just need to have it passed by Parliament, right?
Yeah.
So Edward created his device for succession, or, in this case, I would say John Dudley helped him create the. I'm just making enemies here today. But it wasn't passed by Parliament, and that's why Lady Jane Grey did not remain Queen of England at the time and essentially had to be executed. And so here we are, then we're back to Henry VIII's line of succession. Mary becomes queen. She doesn't have any children. So her sister is next in line, Elizabeth. So
Yeah,
Elizabeth becomes queen, and then they're like, okay, well, she needs to marry. We need her to start popping out kids because she's the last one.
yeah,
Otherwise, we have to start looking at the next people in Henry's line of succession, right?
yeah,
Who were his sister Mary Brandon. I'm just going to call her Mary Brandon so people don't get her
yeah.
confused. Her children.
Hmm.
But he kind of like left out his sister Margaret, which is always
Yeah.
so curious. And this is where we are. So Elizabeth is sick with smallpox. She could die.
Hmm.
She has no heir.
Yeah.
What the hell is going to happen now?
I think to go back to what you've just mentioned, Henry missing out Margaret, I think he did that on purpose. Well, obviously he did do it on purpose because you don't get something passed by Parliament with an accident missing. Um, and I think it's because he didn't want a Scottish foothold in England. So obviously Mary's children were all born in England. So I think that was his reason. And obviously, if you've got three children of your own and each one is stipulated and their heirs,
Yeah.
the chances of it even getting to Elizabeth, never mind after that, the chances are slim. But, you know, that's what happened. So I don't think Henry ever foresaw that it'd even get to his sister Mary's children, never mind have to go any further than that. But I think, how do we want to do this? Because there's obviously the usual suspects involved that fall outside of the way he did his will, for instance, Mary Queen of Scots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the ones that fall if we went with Henry's will. So how do we want to do
Yeah.
it?
I think I kind of want to talk about Mary Queen of Scots first, just because maybe just because she was already a queen. She was the Queen of Scotland. I
Hmm.
I want to kind of overlook the fact that Henry had eliminated her line from succession, but to maybe just look at the fact that she was there, so to speak.
Yeah.
She was an option. She was young at the time. She
She
was
was.
only
She was only
20.
18, 19.
Yeah.
She returned from France the year before, so 1561, before Elizabeth got smallpox.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the thing with Mary at that time is that she already had this idea that she should be the queen because in her eyes, Elizabeth was illegitimate.
Yeah.
But obviously that ignores Henry's will completely.
Right.
Um, but obviously that was her idea. Now, the thing with Mary at that time is she'd only been back, well, less than a year, just over a year, sorry, just over a year. So it would have been a huge thing for her to go, I've been gone for years,
Yeah.
I've come back, my country is largely Protestant, I'm Catholic. I'm now going to take England as well. Like that is a huge move. Do you know what I mean? Like her priorities should have been like getting to know her council, all of that kind of stuff, like involving herself in her own country. So I think the timing probably would have been way off for Mary to start
Yeah.
with. You've then got the bit about religion.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth's council largely would not have wanted Mary Queen of Scots, regardless of when she decided that she wanted the English throne. And I think we have to look at the Scottish as well. Like, would they have wanted Mary to do that? Because to them, they were largely Protestant as well. So surely their worry would have been, if we back her, if it came to force, is she going to turn both countries back Catholic? So I think she'd have a hard time getting the Scots to back her as well if it came to it by force. So I think Mary Queen of Scots is a very, very slim option in 1562. I think it's just no, not going to happen. But obviously at that time, she was also a widow. She wasn't she hadn't been married at that point either. So I think that's the only bit that probably would have stood in her favour, that she was widowed. She'd proven that she was willing to marry,
Yeah.
unlike Elizabeth.
Mhm.
But I think the fact that she hadn't long been back and was Catholic would have put a lot of people off who could ultimately decide whether she got that throne or not, both English and Scottish.
Yeah. It
But I
probably,
think it's a very slim chance for her at that time.
you made some really good arguments there that I hadn't considered. And really, she could have thrown England back into like a civil war fighting
Yeah,
against because of religion. You
yeah,
know, you would have had the Catholics from Mary's reign who would have wanted Catholicism back
yeah,
again and would have fought tooth and nail to get it.
yeah.
And yeah, that's a good point. Well, you shot down Mary Queen of Scots pretty fast.
I just think the timing was not right for her. Like, not after only just coming back, really. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
think the
it.
Scottish people didn't even really know her. So,
Mm.
to then try and take the English throne as well, I think is a bit much if you've only just come back from France.
Yeah.
So,
And she left when she was like 5 or 6
yeah.
or something like so she had been gone for over a decade, maybe a decade and a
Yeah.
half by the time.
I think it's a bit of a big move to come back and then a year later.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So it didn't matter that she was the granddaughter, great granddaughter of Henry the
No, because I
Seventh.
think she was out of the picture in both Henry's will and anyway. So, mm, no.
Okay,
It's a no
so
from me for Mary.
let me ask you this then. So the next person up on the list, would that be Catherine Gray?
Yeah. So Catherine Gray, for anybody that doesn't know, was the daughter of Francis Brandon, younger sister of Lady Jane Grey. Um, and Catherine, you're right, was technically next in line, but Catherine was a bit naughty, shall we say?
Wait, a little bit rebellious. I think she wanted what she
Yes,
wanted,
we'll
maybe.
use the word rebellious instead. So, Catherine was originally betrothed to Lord Herbert, who was the heir of William Herbert, so Earl of Pembroke. Um, but that kind of ultimately fell apart with what happened with Jane. So when that she got married on the same day as Jane, but obviously when everything went down, William Herbert had that annulled. So yeah, you can't blame him because obviously your daughter-in-law being that close to everything that happened is not going to look good for him. So he
Yeah.
kind of distanced his own son from that, had the marriage successfully annulled, um, on the basis that it had not been consummated. So obviously that leaves Catherine young, free, and single.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was then introduced to Edward Seymour.
Dun dun
So
dun.
mhm, that's Earl of Hertford, and allegedly marries him in secret with one witness, who was Lady Jane Seymour,
Yes.
who by the time it all came out was dead, so
Yeah.
couldn't be asked about her role as a witness. And surprisingly enough, the priest's name or anything ever like comes about. Like they can't interrogate him, nothing. So essentially, Elizabeth pretty much acts like this marriage never happened because, your one witness is dead. And obviously, you married without royal permission,
Yeah.
which, if you're next in line to the throne, which she was, and Catherine knew she was, you you're a bit stupid, really, to do that without Elizabeth's permission. Like, for all we know, Elizabeth might have approved that marriage. We don't know. Obviously, she'd want that would probably be the most important marriage for her to consider because it's ultimately going to determine who takes her throne.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that she did it behind her back, like, just no. And then obviously it gets better from there. So, um, Catherine is imprisoned. At
Hmm.
that time, her husband is overseas, but when he comes back, he's also imprisoned. But um, I can't remember his name, Sir Edward, I think it's Warner or Werner, who was looking after Tower residents at that time, should we call them? Um,
Residents.
lets them have visits. Like, how stupid have you got to be? Elizabeth's already really mad about this. And then you let them have visits. So she ends up pregnant twice. And surprisingly enough, her children are called Edward and Thomas Seymour.
I love that, by the way.
Just for originality there. Yeah. Um, but at the time that Elizabeth had smallpox, Catherine was in the Tower.
Oh,
So I think she obviously had a very, very good claim, and she was Protestant.
right.
So I think that works in her favour. I think the downside of it is that she'd already annoyed Elizabeth by doing that. Um, but having said that, Elizabeth had the marriage annulled. So,
Mm.
her children are then declared illegitimate. So she could have actually still held, well, she did still have a claim against that throne. It would have meant that she'd have problems down the line with who succeeds her.
Right.
Like, maybe by that point she could have remarried Edward again, like, properly. But at that time, when Elizabeth was in her bed being treated, she was in the Tower. So I doubt Elizabeth would have named her, but that's not to say that the nobility wouldn't have backed her.
Yeah.
So I do have a partial reason of why they wouldn't, but I won't tell yet.
Why? Why is it secret?
Only because it's someone else that I want to talk about, but a bit further
Oh,
down the line. But
I
it'll make
see.
sense later.
Okay. I do understand, how awkward it would have been had Elizabeth died and Catherine were to succeed her and she's locked up in the tower. They'd be like, well, our new queen is locked up in the tower. We're just going to leave her there
Play.
before the coronation. We'll move her to a
Yeah, we'll let her
different.
out then. But then,
Yeah.
to be fair, the Tudor monarchs do stay in the tower the
That's,
night before their coronation, so she could have just
yeah.
moved
That's
rooms.
what I'm saying. They're the like, we're gonna move you out of this dingy s like I'm sure it wasn't
Yeah,
that dingy cell into this palace room,
yeah.
basically.
You're already in the tower, so that's one problem solved.
And at this time, was she pregnant at this time, or had she already had
Um,
this?
no, well, depending on I think it was October that Elizabeth had smallpox, was it? I can't remember the month of her firstborn, but I think it was the year after, so she could have been.
Okay. Yeah, which then would have helped because then they could have had her remarry Edward Seymour
Yeah.
again
At the end of the
prior.
day, if Elizabeth dies, there's nothing to stop Catherine either reverting that annulment or
Yeah.
just remarrying him and having her children legitimised. So she could have done that.
Yeah, see, now it just almost seems like it would have made sense for Catherine to become queen.
Hmm.
But there was a lot of drama surrounding her, so I don't know if they'd want to go from a queen who suddenly died from smallpox to a drama queen. They're
Who's
like,
in the tower?
yeah, that's right. Like, they're like, okay, can we have a smooth transition? But Elizabeth kind of, she put him in a pickle because if she had just named somebody, it,
Yeah.
but again, I do understand why she didn't because
Oh,
it,
absolutely. I think it just puts a target on your head.
yeah. So what was she to do? That's really, yeah, it blows my mind. We also have Catherine's younger sister Mary, which I feel like we never talk about.
I feel really sorry for Mary because when you read some of the excerpts about her, like they call her crooked back, they call her ugly. It's so sad. Like we don't know. Obviously, there is a portrait of her, but how much can we say that that's true to form? We don't know. So I think the way that she's referred to is quite harsh. But having said that, she also didn't learn from her own sisters. Like learn from experience, or at least your sister's experience. So Mary is obviously the younger one. She was betrothed to Arthur Grey first. Um, but when
Arthur
Mary,
Grey, was he a cousin?
he was the fourth Baron Grey de Wilton or something like that.
Just
So there's probably
weird.
some kind of,
Just
yeah.
weird. Same last name. That's a little weird.
Yeah. So when Mary took the throne, that betrothal was dissolved.
Okay.
Not sure
Pro-
why, but I imagine Mary wanted to decide who those girls were going to marry. Obviously, she'd already had trouble with Jane. Um,
Yes.
trouble being an understatement, but yeah. Um, and she did okay at first. She was appointed as a maid of honor, so she was doing okay. Um, but then at the time Elizabeth had smallpox, Mary was doing okay. Like she was still single, nothing going on. So on that basis, she could have, been the successor. She was also Protestant, and she also falls into that line in Henry's will, being descended from Mary Tudor, his sister, not his daughter. So yeah, but then 3 years later, she makes the same mistake as her sister and marries without royal assent. And why? The only thing that she did do different is she had a lot more witnesses. Well, three more. But so that's the only thing that she did do. But obviously, again, she married, well, I don't say again because Catherine didn't really marry below her status. Mary did.
Mm.
And again, Elizabeth was not happy. Now, the poor guy, Thomas Keyes, was thrown into the Fleet,
Oh,
which
that's
from
not good.
everything that I've read, I would not wish on my worst enemy.
No.
And Mary was put under house arrest. Now, eventually, Thomas is released, but Mary never sees him again, which is quite sad. And she eventually is like passed around houses. Like she lives with Catherine Willoughby for a bit, who's her step grandmother. Um, and even she is surprised by the lack of belongings that she's got when she turns up. So it kind of shows what state of living she was faced with, moving around all these houses. Some of them were nicer than others, obviously. At some point, people are just getting annoyed with having to house her. And Elizabeth does end up setting her up in her own house in London, but then she welcomes her back to court. So she becomes a maid of honor to Elizabeth. Um, but then she dies within a couple of years. So she's got a really sad life. I actually feel for her. Like she
Yeah.
tries to leave jewels to her stepchildren, so the children of Thomas Keys and stuff, and it's really sad. But I think if we just focus on the 1562 bit when Elizabeth would have been looking for an heir, Mary at that time was in the clear. Like she hadn't done anything, she hadn't annoyed anybody. She was Protestant, born in England, fits into the will. But the problem is you've got Catherine as the stopper. Like,
Yeah.
how do you circumvent Catherine and go straight to Mary? And obviously, based on their actions, it looks like Catherine was probably the more rebellious of the two. So I think even Mary would have had a hard job taking that throne because then what does she do with her own sister? Does she
Right.
leave her in the tower?
Yeah.
Because the
Oh,
minute she releases her, is she going to try and take the throne?
yeah, that's a good point.
So I
Oh,
think it'd be a really difficult situation. And obviously, you've then got what would she have done if she was queen? Would she have married Thomas Keys? Nobody's going to want Thomas Keys as king consort.
no.
But then, if she's queen, she might have chosen completely different. We don't know. But 1562, yeah, she was open and clear, other than the obstacle of her sister in the tower.
Yeah. Would she have been as strong as Elizabeth the First in saying, no, I'm not going to marry, or I want to choose who I marry? Do we even know enough about Mary Grey to know if she had the strength to push back, or was she just go along with the flow? Or who? I mean, she's the youngest. Catherine is the middle child. Honestly, I'm a middle child. It does not surprise me one bit that she was more rebellious.
I think you could probably say that Mary must have learned some of the lesson because when Thomas was released, she didn't go and find him.
Hmm.
And I think she knew that, if I go and find him, that's it. I'm done for. Like, technically, she was still under, well, she wasn't under house arrest. She was just being passed around like an object. So maybe she realized that, life is bad now.
Yeah.
If I go and find him, it's
Gosh.
not going to get any better, is it?
The lives of the Grey children, Jane, Catherine, and Mary, are all so tragic. I mean, even Catherine, after she was released from the tower, um, had a sad life. Jane, obviously, that was a sad ending for her too. It was like they weren't allowed to have any agency. It
Yeah.
was you belong to the crown, you will do as the crown says, and if you do
Yeah.
not, we will lock you in the tower.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that has anything to do with
Sad.
being the grandmother of Mary, who
Mm.
secretly married Charles Brandon.
Yeah.
They're like, Grandma did it.
Quite sad, isn't it? Because, yeah, grandma did do it.
Yeah, but
But then she also married Henry's best friend. So,
yeah. Oh gosh. Okay,
mm-hmm.
so the Grey sisters are out of the way. So let's just say Elizabeth died and council and parliament were like, nope, we're skipping over the Grey sisters. It's too much. And we've already crossed out Mary, Queen of Scots. So who does that leave?
Well, there's a couple of other women who could possibly raise a claim, and then I've got one man. So
Oh.
I'll leave the man till the end.
Oh, okay. So who are these other women?
Okay, so first one, you'll know both of these names. Margaret Stanley, Countess of Derby.
Was she the okay, let me get this right. Was she the daughter of Eleanor Brandon?
Yes.
Okay,
So
all
again,
right.
it follows the Mary Tudor line. So, can't completely disregard her if the Grey sisters are out of the way. Um, but the problem with Margaret was she knew that she was in line. And apparently, at one point, she wasn't very happy when there were discussions between Elizabeth and the Duke of Anjou because she saw that as a danger to her claim to the throne. Because obviously, if Elizabeth marries and has heirs, she's gone. She's out the way. But I don't think anybody ever gave her any serious thought because obviously, to get down to Margaret Stanley, you've got to go the Grey sisters,
Yeah.
Mary Queen of Scots,
Yeah.
and then her
Oh my
and
God.
the other person who I'm going to talk about in a minute. So it's a long way to go. But at one point, I'm sure she was like seventh in line or something like that. So, you know, it's possible, but I don't think anybody at the time would have given her any serious thought. So I think it's somebody that I wanted to mention because I don't think I've ever heard her mentioned in these conversations about who could possibly have
Yeah.
done it.
This is, I have to
Um,
say, like let's do a modern day comparison here. That would be like if Charles III died and William and his children were no longer available, then it would go to Harry, right? Then you'd be like, nobody expected that to happen.
exactly. Yeah.
Same situation. Okay.
Yeah. And she was also married. So she was married to Henry Stanley, fourth Earl of Derby, and she married 1555, I believe. So she was married when the smallpox thing was happening.
Okay.
So I think again that's another aspect of would we want her husband as king consort kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I think she's got that additional element of she's not a single lady who the council can possibly find a marriage for. Now, obviously, we know the way the Tudor court works. They would have found a way to annul it if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But I think she wasn't really given any serious consideration. But she is there in that line of succession. So
It's
yeah.
so interesting when it comes to the women. It's so important who the men are that they marry, but when it's a king, it doesn't matter. He can marry whoever he wants.
Yes, exactly. Especially if your name's Henry VIII.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Oh,
the next one, you'll know this name as well. Also Margaret. Any hints? No?
so now we're back to Henry's sister Margaret's line,
Hmm.
which is interesting. So we're looking at Margaret Douglas.
Yeah.
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 How
So I
old is
thought I'd
she?
throw her in there as
Yeah.
just like a, well, she would have been quite old, not quite old, but you know what I mean.
For
The
the time,
older
maybe.
of that group of possible heirs.
Yeah.
So, but obviously she was the daughter of Margaret Tudor.
Yeah.
Um, she also ended up being the grandmother of James VI.
And
So, in a way, she found her way to the throne through
she
her
ha
grandson.
okay, the one thing I love about Margaret Douglas is she had a way of ending up in the tower herself. She-
Considering how much she was favoured by Henry VIII, like he absolutely loved her. And obviously, at some point, she also spent a lot of time with Mary Tudor Brandon as
yeah,
well. So
yeah,
she lived with her for a bit as well. So I think what happened between, you had this great relationship with your aunt and uncle into causing absolute chaos.
yeah,
But she's there. She's an option.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, she had a way
And
of,
obviously, as we said earlier, God, I can't speak now. Too many Marys and Margarets. Mary Queen of Scots at that point wasn't remarried. So Margaret Douglas at that point didn't have a grandson called James VI to consider. So,
yeah,
it would have been her rather than her. Well, you could argue her son, but I'd rather
yeah.
not.
I've never really thought of this before. And now that you bring that up, that Margaret Douglas was the daughter of Margaret Tudor, Mary Queen of Scots was the granddaughter. So Margaret Douglas was older. Yeah. Oh, gosh, that really does end up like complicating things a little bit more, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I wonder
messy, but it's an option.
what kind of queen would she have been? I feel like she would have been wild,
Yes. I think that
unpredictable.
would be an interesting reign for sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Obviously, it probably would have ended up with James the Sixth on the throne, which is what happened anyway. So,
Yeah, that is really the thing about this, isn't it? How it's just so ironic that we end up with James on the throne.
yeah,
Okay, before we even get back to that, so is that it for the women that we can
that's
think
it for
of?
the women.
Okay, so that ran out quite quickly, actually.
Mm.
I mean, we had Catherine. Well, I mean, we could say we had Mary Stuart. Not really. But then we had Catherine Gray, we had Mary Gray, we had Margaret Stanley, Margaret Douglas. Did I miss one? I don't think I did in there. I
No,
think.
got them.
Okay. And now we're left with a male heir, and I have no idea who he is and where he came from. Like what line? Who is this guy?
So it's a bit of a out there suggestion, but I think he's got a strong claim.
Okay.
So Henry Hastings was the third Earl of Huntingdon.
Okay.
So if we give you a bit of background first, so his parents were Francis Hastings and Catherine Pole.
I don't really know who these people are, to be honest with you. The last
Okay.
name, the
So
surnames are familiar.
Catherine Pole was the daughter of Henry Pole, first Baron Montague,
Okay. Was
who
he
was the oldest son of Richard Pole,
and Margaret?
yeah,
Okay,
who was
so
the daughter of George, Duke of Clarence.
okay. Oh, so now we're back to a Plantagenet line. Holy
Yes.
crap.
So he was the Yorkist side of it. So yeah. I think what's interesting is that, you know, he does seem to be considered in some aspects as a possibility. I think it's largely the fact that he's a male,
Yeah, of course.
but he was also Protestant and he went to, well, say school. He was tutored alongside Edward the Sixth.
Oh,
So that royal relationship was there. And I just kind of feel that if it boiled down to who are we going to back here, I think the nobility would have backed Henry Hastings. One, because he's male, two, because he was in his early 20s at the time. Yorkist line, rather than going to a female, which I'm not saying is right by any means. I am pro women being able to do whatever they want when they want for themselves. But obviously, we don't live in the Tudor period. So I think he would have been the favourite if it had boiled down to it. So I know earlier I said that I did want us to mention something else about Catherine
yeah.
Gray. Those two technically could have fought over the throne, but I think there's a spanner thrown in there because both of them were Protestant. I think my question would be, would those two join together to make sure there was no Catholic claim from Mary Queen of Scots? Because surely if they stick together, I don't mean get married, but I mean, stick together as Protestants to make sure the Catholic claim doesn't come to England. So I think they probably would.
Wow. That honestly, that was a twist I wasn't expecting. I was not thinking Plantagenet whatsoever because by this
I've
time,
thought about this way too much, haven't I?
once Henry VII marries Elizabeth of York, that idea kind of dies out. We have the rebellions, obviously, with Perkin
Yeah.
Warbeck and all of that. But by the time halfway through, let's say, Henry VIII's reign, there's not really any thought, I feel like, about Plantagenets. He's got children. Henry VIII's got children. He's like, we don't need to worry about this. I got kids of my own now. Obviously, they're going to have their own children. Spoiler alert, they didn't.
Well, there is actually another interesting thing about Henry Hastings, which I didn't know if I'd mention, but and obviously I don't know what the answer is. None of us know, so don't come at me for um not telling the truth because I don't know what the truth is. So Henry Hastings' grandmother was a lady called Anne Stafford. You know what I'm going to say, don't you?
I know exactly where this is going, but I'm going to let
Who is
you.
apparently a mistress of Henry VIII. Now, Henry Hastings' father, Francis, was born in 1514. And New Year of 1513, Anne Stafford was given the second most expensive gift at court by Henry VIII. And
What?
that year, her husband, George Hastings, was made the first Earl of Huntingdon. So
This
that's
is
all I'm going to say. And now I will leave it to everybody else to make their
no,
own
no,
assumptions
no,
from that.
no. This is so reminiscent of Henry VIII with Mary Boleyn.
Yep.
Wow. How have I never know? I guess I've never looked into it, never even considered that there could be any type of scandal there.
Wow.
Wow.
So even if you take out the whole Yorkist
Yeah.
line, does Henry Hastings have a genuine claim to the throne as through his own mother?
I feel like I just got goosebumps about this because that was a you just dropped a bomb on me here.
To be fair, chances are probably not, because it doesn't get raised very often that Francis Hastings was an illegitimate child of Henry VIII. Like, I've never read that anyway. I don't think I have anyway. But I do have a goldfish memory. I will tell everybody that because I don't remember anything. So I could have read it and just forgot. But it does make you wonder that she gets the second most expensive gift at court.
Yeah.
Her husband is made an earl, and then
Why?
Francis Hastings is born, who is
Whoa.
obviously the father of Henry
I I
Hastings, who
think
is
you're
our
onto
possible claimant.
you're onto something here, Amy. I feel like you need to dig into this a little. When we think of Henry VIII, right? Obviously, Henry Fitzroy was illegitimate, but he raised him.
Yeah.
Henry Hastings, from what you're saying, would have been born before, right? Before
So
Fitzroy?
it was Francis Hastings who is possibly
Right. That's right. Okay.
mm, the child in question.
But still, okay, so Francis Hastings would
Yeah.
have been born
So he was born
before.
1514.
Yeah. So, So let's just say Henry VIII discovers that Anne Stafford is pregnant. She's like, it's your baby. It's not my husband's. How would he know, right? Maybe that's the biggest confusion is that Henry VIII wasn't certain 100%, like he was with Henry Fitzroy. With
Yeah.
Fitzroy, he knew that was his son, and that's
Yeah.
why he didn't legitimize him, but recognized him.
Yeah.
So I think you have a pretty good theory you could work off of here. I think you need to dig into that a little bit. I feel like this is a book idea, Amy. You guys heard it here first. This is Amy's idea. Do not steal this from her. I want to read more about this.
It was just an option to throw in because I thought, you know what, he's got the Yorkist claim. And even if there is nothing there, it's a big coincidence.
Oh, you guys, seriously, I bet you're loving this right now. You're watching or listening, and your brain is like moving as fast as mine is, wanting to like connect the dots. and see.
People may have read more about it than me and be able to say, no, it's not possible because XYZ. So please comment if you know anything more, because that's literally all I know. So
Okay.
it could be the biggest conclusion ever that I'm jumping to. So
I'm right there with you though. I clearly I'm pliable. So oh gosh. Okay, so then that leaves us with James the Sixth, who inevitably became, but he wasn't
yeah,
even born in 1562, right? No, he wasn't even born. So
I think the worst bit is if we go for his grandmother as an option, then we also have to consider her son, which
mm,
isn't great.
yeah,
I know obviously he wasn't really favoured amongst the Scottish nobility when he did marry Mary Queen of Scots, but
yeah,
could you imagine if he'd have become king? Oof,
yeah. No, that would have been a disaster.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, this was a fun episode. I always feel like going into these, I never really know how they're going to turn out. I feel like I say that about every episode that I do with anybody, is I just never know how it's going to go. But this was really interesting. I think it was thought-provoking. And I would love to hear what people have to say after listening to this.
Me too. I think obviously we've spoke about different people. If there's anybody that we've missed,
Please.
shout out. We've discussed some obvious ones and some not so obvious ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, shout out if there's people that we're missing.
Yes, please. And keep the ideas coming for the what if
Yes.
episodes. I feel like our list is growing, isn't it?
It is. I love seeing ideas. And I know it's easy to listen to an episode and think of a suggestion from
Yeah.
that. So I think you said it a couple of episodes that just because we don't do it doesn't mean we're not going to. It'll just be further down the line so we can spread the subjects out a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved this. Amy, thank you for all of the knowledge that you brought to this episode. I feel like
You
you
mean
went
me jumping to conclusions about illegitimate children?
you know what? That was my favorite part of this whole episode. I just have to say that. The rest was interesting, but that was like I always look forward to hearing things that are new to me. And
Well,
that
that's why I saved it till last, first of all, because he was, it's the Yorkist side of things, right? Completely ignoring Henry VIII's will and everything else. We're going back to Edward the Fourth days.
yeah,
But then when I looked at dates and, who his parents and grandparents were, I thought, hmm,
this is interesting.
well, I'll mention it and let everybody else come to their own conclusion.
I loved it. I loved this episode. Amy, thanks again, and I can't wait to do this again with you next week.
Yes, see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Off the Record on Tudors Dynasty and Beyond. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following the podcast. And if you'd like to support the work that goes into researching and creating these episodes, you can find extra content and ways to join the community through Patreon and Substack. And don't forget, you can now comment directly on episodes over on Spotify. I love reading every single one. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you back here for more royal drama and real history.